Good morning, AUSA attendants. In 5 minutes, we'll begin with the next presentation, which is Integrated Assurance, Strengthening Indo-Pacific Land Power, Network, and Employing Intellectual NCOs as the Lynchpin of Interoperability.
You're making sure that they're set on.
Good morning, attendees. The presentation will begin in one moment. Please go ahead and take your seats.
Well, good morning, everybody. Let me turn it over to the MC here, who's going to give the introduction.
Good morning, everyone. Major General McFarlane, the Deputy Commanding General of 1st Corps, and Command Sergeant Major Schmidt, the USARPAC Command Sergeant Major, will host this morning's panel on generating readiness in the Indo-Pacific. Joining them on stage are Major General Hilbert, Commander of the 11th Airborne Division, Brigadier General Ewers, Deputy Commanding General of the 7th Infantry Division, Brigadier General Cotman, Commander of the 593rd Expeditionary Sustainment Command, Command Sergeant Major Bolmer, 8th Army Command Sergeant Major, and First Sergeant Beck of the 25th Infantry Division Lightning Academy. Please welcome our panelists.
All right, well, good morning. Certainly an honor to be here, and always great to be back at AUSA, where we learn about all the initiatives and activities happening across our awesome Army. Today we're going to talk to you a little bit about how U.S. Army 1st Corps and U.S. Army Pacific are driving joint and multinational readiness across the Pacific. I'm going to start by highlighting the fact that one thing we know that I heard General Casey say last month at the Fort Moore Doughboy Awards, the next war will not be like the last. The character of war is evolving, as our Secretary said yesterday, and we're going to be deliberate about the lessons we pull out of history and apply to today's fight and make deliberate decisions about how we're transforming our Army as we move to ensure we win the next fight. I'm going to start by giving you history, a little significant history from World War II. And that is with the Battle of Buna in Papua New Guinea. In November 1942, the 32nd Infantry Division and Australian 7th Division moved to retake Buna from the Japanese. I want to highlight the 32nd Infantry Division executed the Louisiana maneuvers. So they had done operational and tactical maneuvers and operations across Louisiana with the U.S. Army training base that did that. We thought they were ready. As they got into theater and executed operations which include moving across the Owen Stanley Range, which is about 145 miles. It took them 7 weeks to make that movement based on the restrictive terrain, the jungle environment, which was, temperatures and humidity that far exceeded anything they were ready for. So 7 weeks to make something that normally takes an hour to fly. They took such significant casualties along the way from both Japanese ambushes at choke points along that terrain, as well as the weather and the disease that exists in the Pacific, that General Eichelberger, the 1st Corps commander, ended up going in and relieving the 32nd ID commander as they pushed to retake Buna, which they finally did in January 1943. Lessons learned along the way was how important it was to work with the host nation or indigenous people. They used them and their animals to move supplies across that very harsh terrain. So as we look at what we can pull from there, the importance of a combined arms maneuver, the fundamentals of fighting, which had to be applied, and then understanding the environment in which you're going to fight in to ensure you are ready is significant. So as you look at the map behind me, you can see the Pacific. General Flynn just punctuated the importance of all the green, the small amounts of green in all the blue up there. Over 60% of the world's population lives in the Indo-Pacific. A majority, 75% of the armies or nations' defenses in the Pacific are Army forces. So it's land matters, and we are a key part of the joint forces General Flynn mentioned. So as we go to prepare for the next fight in the Pacific, we are applying the U.S. Army Pacific's campaign plan. It starts with organizing. Step one, the panel that preceded us talked about key aspects of that organization, the multi-domain task forces that the Army's standing up, not only in the Pacific, but in other regions. Also the unique theater organizations that will enable the operational level headquarters to succeed. The theater fires element, which Colonel John Harvey was up here, the Theater Information Advantage Directorate, the Theater Strike Effects Group, are all new things for our Army that we're organizing to enable the next fight. So as we organize, we go to the next step, which is generating readiness. We do that across the Corps at our home stations, building the fundamentals or mastering the fundamentals, being brilliant at the basics. We also send our organizations to combat training centers. Our 7th ID sends the Stryker Brigade combat teams to the National Training Center. But in Alaska and Hawaii, we have 2 new campuses, the Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Centers, one of which the 25th ID leadership is at right now as they're still in their rotation to build expertise at operating in the jungle environment. In Alaska, the 11th Airborne Division, which General Hilbert will talk about in a second, focuses on the Arctic environment. Key aspects beyond just the environment, which are significant, is the joint resources we execute with, but also the multinational organizations that come and build interoperability with us. So they learn from us, but we also learn from them, and I'll talk about that in a second. So for both of those locations, the Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center rotations, the one in Hawaii this year and the one in Alaska that will occur in late January, over a dozen countries are sent in organizations. I was just in a battalion size or battalion talk for the Japanese element that's participating in Hawaii right now. So from battalion down to platoon, and some are as small as a squad, but we are integrating with our partners as we do these rotations. Then the joint aspect, large Navy presence around the islands in Hawaii, and the Air Force, a significant contribution there for the Hawaii team. And then Joe Hilbert will talk about all of the Air Force partnership they have there in Alaska with the 11th Air Force that's based right there with them. The next step is we apply that readiness through operations pathways. It is over 40 different exercises with 12 countries where we apply the readiness that we built, and we continue to build operational and tactical readiness as we learn from our partners and they learn from us. We address training objectives our partners have. We also are conscious on building our readiness objectives or gaining our readiness that we'll need for the next fight. And then the last thing is building joint interior lines. The interoperability we build, the exercises we do, where we do think, like in 2022, we offloaded an APS ship in the Philippines in spring of 2022, are things that you don't get to do in the continental United States that we're able to do as part of pathways. Using Army watercraft systems like we did in Talisman Sabre 2023 was a significant event as we moved some Australian tanks from Australia into Indonesia, are things we never get to do when we're back CONUS. So it's a great opportunity for us, our soldiers and leaders, to exercise operational maneuver where we can, and then continue to build the tactical proficiencies we need to deter the next fight and be ready to dominate if the first battle comes. So let me turn it over right now to the 25th ID command team, who is in Hawaii executing JPMRC rotation 25-1, and they'll be followed by Sergeant Major Schmidt, Jason Schmidt, who's going to talk through the importance of developing and building strong NCO corps, who we know are the backbone of our Army, and other armies are learning that they are the backbone of theirs as well. Over to the 25th ID team.
Hey, thanks a lot, First Corps team. My name is Major General Marcus Evans. I'm the Commanding General for the 25th Infantry Division, joined here by Command Sergeant Major Sean Curry, the Command Sergeant Major for the 25th Infantry Division. Sorry we couldn't be there for AUSA this year. We're currently participating in the Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center rotation, an important rotation for our Army because it is a time when we can pull together joint forces, multinational forces, but most importantly, focus on the campaign of learning that is part of the Transformation in Contact initiative. We just finished up working with 2nd Brigade of the 101st and talking very closely with the 101st on their lessons learned from their training at the Joint Readiness Training Center in August. We've been able to take those lessons learned, put them in the hands and the minds of the soldiers and the leaders. Also, OCs coming out here from JRTC, and it's an opportunity for our soldiers to learn how to fight the equipment and the organization that the Army has provided.
Yes, sir. Those soldiers are taking all that equipment and they're putting it to the paces here in the jungles of Oahu in Hawaii. We have the ability to leap between our islands to practice what we will do when the time comes for us to fight for real, and the soldiers are out there getting after it, sir.
Yeah, specifically, they're focused on warfighting readiness. They're focused on partnerships with multinational partners here,
Yes, sir.
and we're evaluating them on how well they can see the enemy, sense the environment they're operating in, how well they can strike with the increased lethality, how well they can sustain themselves, protect themselves, and execute mission command. It's a tremendous time to be able to train this in the archipelago environment along with joint and multinational partners. Back to you, First Corps. Hey, thanks a lot, First.
So thanks for having me, and welcome to everybody. It's an honor to be able to highlight what the Non-Commissioned Officer Corps of the United States Army Pacific is doing in support of General Flynn's 3 lines of effort of wargaming, campaigning, and warfighting. I don't have any charts. So what we do, we seek to look at our interoperability in 2 ways, right? Our commanders bake in tactical interoperability daily with the 40 exercises that are going on across the region. Where we're concentrated in on is looking at the intellectual or the professionalization of host nations' non-commissioned officer corps. So we do that by invitation, with their consent, and at their pace. And this year, I did bring copies if anybody's interested after this. Sergeant Poole over there has the 2024 latest edition of our Pacific Enlisted Leader Development Strategy, where, if needed, when we go in to do a needs or gap analysis, then we'll use different processes such as analyzing, developing, designing, integrating, and evaluating, and then offering recommendations on how to build professionalization, and intellectual operability. I am joined by Sergeant Major Bolmer and First Sergeant Beck, who are going to talk some of the great initiatives that both 8th Army and the Lightning Academy does to help build the tactical interoperability and the interoperability on the intellectual side that we talked about. So I look forward to having a discussion about the Non-Commissioned Officer Corps and how we're in support of General Flynn's efforts across the region, and I'll hand it over to you, sir.
Hey, thanks, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joe Hilbert. I command the 11th Airborne Division. Unique with the 11th Airborne Division, we're in the Global Force Management Pool. We're assigned to U.S. Army Pacific, and we are the Army's Arctic and cold weather and high altitude experts. So a lot would ask, well, how do you balance that or reconcile it? The reality is we reconcile it exactly the way that General Flynn described yesterday, through organizing, generating, and applying, as also General McFarlane mentioned. So first, on organization. It was activation of the division 2 years ago as part of the Army's Arctic strategy, but then assignment to the U.S. Army Pacific. What I would remind everybody is that when you look at the first island chain, it begins in the North Pacific with the Aleutians. That's U.S. sovereign territory. We're stationed in U.S. sovereign territory where the first island chain begins. The second piece is through the generation, and that's through JPMRC Alaska campus. Just like JPMRC in Hawaii that's focused on the jungle environment for the 25th, we're going to focus on the Arctic environment at JPMRC Alaska. That training area is comprised of 3 major training areas: the Yukon training area, the Donnelly training area, and the Tanana Flats. If you take that combined training area space, it's twice the size of the National Training Center, just those 3 range complex alone. As General McFarlane mentioned, one of the beauties of that training area is not just that it's in the Arctic and the environment in which we're supposed to be the experts, but it's also part of the Joint Pacific Range Complex, JPARC. JPARC's used by the United States Air Force. It's an air and ground training range where the United States Air Force will conduct the Red Flag Alaska exercise routinely up there alongside us. As we look forward to JPMRC Alaska this next time, we also have our allies and partners that will be with us. We'll have Canada, we'll have Nepal, and we'll have Mongolia that will be participating with us, as well as observers from our allies in the Nordic regions, as well as observers from across the Pacific. Finally, I'll talk about applying that combat power as we go on Operation Pathways. So we're going to generate that combat power at JPMRC Alaska as a collective training event, and then we're going to go apply it in Operation Pathways. The great misnomer or false dichotomy that we have in our Army is, do we consume readiness on pathways or do we build readiness? I would argue we sustain readiness on pathways, because we're going to take that readiness that we build at JPMRC and then we're going to go apply it in the Pacific to then bring it back up into Alaska when we get into the winter, to then rebuild and move back into the collective training that we're going to do at JPMRC as we do that each year in the winter in Alaska in our Army's toughest environments. So it's an exciting time to be in U.S. Army Pacific. It's an exciting time to be in Alaska in the 11th Airborne Division, and I look forward to your questions.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Cotman. I'm the commander for the 593rd ESC. We are the Expeditionary Sustainment Command for America's First Corps. When it comes to operation pathways and readiness for the sustainment warfighting function, that really starts about a year out when it comes to us. Understanding the requirements that the units need when they're going to operate west of the IDL, and also building that UDL, that load plan for that fort to port mission. Making sure that we're loading that vessel to make sure it can support what the operational plan is. We want to make sure we load it because there's going to be several S-pods that we're going to deliver equipment. We want to make sure it's loaded right, so as we go to each S-pod, we're unloading that equipment in the right way. I know we've been there where we had that critical piece of equipment that's on the wrong deck, and then you had to move everything around to make sure you can get it off on the S-pod that you need. So that's building readiness for us when it comes at home station, when we go through those systems and processes to make sure that we have the right load plans as we work with the units and understand those requirements. The other part is the J, ROS, and I on the other end, making sure that we understand the capability and capacity that our allies and partners can help us with when it comes to downloading that equipment and moving it to a tactical assembly area. We are not going to have all the capability that we need at that point, whether it's competition, whether it's crisis, or whether it's conflict. Us working with our partners gives us that understanding of the capability that we need when we are executing our mission when it comes to, in our partners' territory, and also understanding where we can use land when it comes to tactical assembly areas. And the last thing is just that enduring support for that operation during operation pathways and understanding that readiness. The good thing that we do when it comes to operation pathways, we build in sustainment task into the operation. Whether it's a JLOTS operation, whether it's a JPOS operation, we're making sure we're exercising in that environment, understand the restrictions and the constraints that may be when we execute sustained operations. And the next thing is we integrate our reserve component into the operation, ensuring that they are also operating in the environment that they were operating in the Indo-Pacific. That's critical, as we saw when the 451st ESC did Cobra Gold 24. They were the ESC that operated and did the sustainment when it came to Cobra Gold 24, not the 593rd, the active duty component. I look forward to your questions.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joe Ewers. I'm a bayonet soldier. I currently serve as the Deputy Commanding General for Support for the 7th Infantry Division, and on behalf of Major General Michelle Schmidt and Command Sergeant Major LaRocque, I'm pleased to represent the Bayonet Division today. The Bayonet Division has a firm spot in Pacific history with accolades in the Aleutian Islands, as mentioned, in Leyte, in Okinawa, in Korea, to name just a few. So certainly a long and illustrious history of honorable warfighting in the Pacific. Starting with the organizing principle, who are we? We got 2 Stryker Brigade combat teams and 1 theater enabling cab that we provide TRA oversight for. When we organize to warfight, we require a multi-compo solution to be able to apply that command and control in support of campaigning in the Pacific. But really to talk about integrated assurance and the principles that were referenced already this morning with organizing, generating and applying readiness, where that really stands out for us as a division, as that tactical unit of action, I would first and foremost highlight the Korea Rotational Force. So with KRF 12, and when the Department of Defense shifted to increase support to the EUCOM Theater of Operations in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we transitioned as an Army to providing a Stryker Brigade combat team to the Korea Rotational Force. And that very first Stryker Brigade combat team came from 7th ID. It was our 2-2 SBCT and KRF 12. We are currently in the process of sending 1-2 SBCT in support of KRF 15. And in just a very short time, we will follow at 2-2 again in KRF 17. So why that matters, and in the process of generating and applying readiness, we found a real gold mine in the KRF mission set. First off, our teammates at 8th Army and 2nd Infantry Division and our ROC partners are excellent gold standard partners who have world-class training environments, from the Korea Training Center to Rodriguez Range and everything in between. Our Stryker Brigade combat teams are building readiness in order to sustain readiness overall, to not only deliver a ready formation there, but to return one back to home station at the end while gaining excellent experience during that time. So we are very much grateful for that opportunity, and it is making us better every single day. We have certainly applied forces across the variety of pathways, opportunities. Many of those were mentioned yesterday and in other pitches today, but just to put a finger on a couple of things. So first off, when we have to deploy, and we have to deploy over sea and air, it is a forcing function. And it is a forcing function that helps us learn that craft and perfect that craft, everything from load plans to UDLs to personnel readiness and the like. It's the manifestation of the PSRT drivers of readiness. Secondarily, for command and control, we've got to be able to apply command and control in theater, and that requires the Army operations process of plan, prepare, execute, and assess. But it also applies to planning, mission, the MDMP process, and not just applying that, but teaching that, reteaching it, and even learning other ways to make that better has stood out. But maybe nothing stands out more than getting around a map with our allies and partners and talking terrain and starting with the red pen. And that's a really galvanizing experience. For maneuver warfare, we're focused on combining arms, and that starts with the JELC cycle, planning, getting commanders involved early and planning valuable exercises where we have that opportunity to combine arms, because that's the essence of maneuver warfare, which is one of our competitive advantages. And then lastly, just functional rehearsals, whether it's command and control, sustainment. There are limitations that we face every single day in this very daunting theater, not the least of which being the operating environment, as was referenced in the historical vignette General McFarlane mentioned. And those skills come in handy and help us see ourselves. So with that, I'll pass the mic, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Rob Bolmer, 8th Army Command Sergeant Major. 8th Army is the only field army in the Army. We're forward stationed, permanently stationed in the Republic of Korea. I'm going to talk real quick about the importance that our non-commissioned officers play in strengthening our alliance that's 74 years strong. We're combined. Everything that we do in Korea is a combined operation with the Koreans, from the tactical level all the way up to the operational level. And our NCOs are at the forefront of all those. Our NCO Academy has Korean soldiers teaching at it. We have U.S. Army soldiers teaching at the Korean Non-Commissioned Officer Academy. We conduct, annually we conduct an E3B, and mostly non-commissioned officers run the E3B, as you're all aware, but we also bring in Koreans, and the Korean soldiers participate, and we'd had about 42 last year earn their E3B badges, and then this year they'll become instructors and evaluators when we execute E3B. So our NCOs are out there at the forefront, integrating with the Koreans, and there's no gap in between what we do and what they do, because they have NCOs that actually teach in our KATUSA program. It's called the Korean Augmentation to United States Army, where there's Korean soldiers that serve alongside our soldiers in our units. And then those instructors at the KTA, the KATUSA Training Academy, they go back to the Korean Army with the knowledge and skills of how to be an instructor and how the U.S. Army does things. So very good opportunity in Korea to see NCOs doing the work that's very important to strengthening alliances at the lowest and highest levels. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm First Sergeant David Beck, the Lightning Academy First Sergeant, 25th Infantry Division in Musa Hall. Just a brief on what Lightning Academy is and how we actually stood up. We've been around since the 40s. Did not become an actual academy of teaching until around 2001. Sorry. Within that, we focused primarily on air assault operations. In 2013, there was a need for jungle operations to be brought back after jungle operations was shut down in 1999. From that point on, we stood up the jungle operations training course, of which we still teach today. The way the Lightning Academy is designed is primarily all NCO based, and we work heavily on partnership with foreign partners all over the globe. I currently have 2 foreign instructors that actually teach within the Lightning Academy today. Right now we have a permanent instructor from the Brazilian Army that's allowing us to really build that relationship on how we deal with jungle operations within the Pacific. Next month, we will also be receiving a second Brazilian instructor as a non-commissioned officer equivalent to a squad leader with us to help us have an understanding of really how partnership works within a squad level within the 25th Infantry Division and the Brazilian Army. We continuously send other instructors all over the globe to have an understanding of operational tracking, jungle warfare, whether it's in Brunei, Australia, or going on pathway missions through MTTs and the like to make sure that we have a good partnership and understanding of how we work in a jungle environment. There's other courses that we put on, but our main focus is that jungle environment and the building of relationships within the NCO Corps. And thank you. Look forward to your questions.
Anybody got any questions?
Hi, thanks for a great discussion. This is Alice Xue. I'm a reporter with VOA. I have two questions. Regarding the axis of evil, we know that China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have been more coordinated in terms of undermining the U.S.-led order and fighting against what they call the Western hegemony and imperialism. So I wonder, in a war over Taiwan, would these four countries have some coordinated response or contingency planning? What would be their roles in this war and their coordination with the CCP at that time? And secondly is, in the next administration, what would be an effective strategy for the U.S. to effectively break this axis of evil? Should the U.S. target the CCP and disrupt its support and links with the other three countries and set this at the core of the strategy? So what's your thoughts on this? Thank you.
Hey, we're going to stay focused on operational and tactical readiness and how we're building that with joint multinational partners. I appreciate the question, but it's probably for a different audience that you should be asking. Any other questions?
Good morning. My name is Matt Sergeant Sarvine. I work with Walter Reed. What kind of NCO or soldier development as far as tactics, techniques, and procedures are you seeing from the ground level up? Nothing promotes change, nothing promotes technology like warfare, especially a competent, agile enemy. So what kind of new adaptations have we seen to our fighting force given the current adversaries in the Pacific?
Good question. So what we're doing at the Lightning Academy, really within the 25th altogether, is we're focusing really at that squad level and that understanding of how we are actually going to fight in any type of environment. And we do this through two different things. Something that the 25th has been doing over the last 2 years is our jungle medicine course, to focus primarily with where you're from, and having an understanding of where we're at now medically on the ground and where we need to be getting to. So we bring in a lot of different partners, whether it's special operations forces, regular doctors, or nurses and stuff from the surrounding areas, to really give us that understanding of how do we actually get after it with the medical understanding of what the battlefield could be like within that type of environment. Other things that we're doing within the Lightning Academy itself is partnering very much with a lot of these other armies and really learning the logistics that they're actually going through and how they do that. Like I said, we're working with the Brazilians right now with an understanding of how do you move everything through the Amazon, and how would we actually change how we do things now to be able to meet that demand. We also partner with things like in Australia, an understanding of tracking in different types of environments that I can't really show NCOs and soldiers in the 25th unless I actually send people there. if that answers your questions.
Go ahead there in the back.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much. Chris Osborne, Warrior. I'm interested in the Jungle Warfare Center. Any upcoming exercises or plans that you have to further prepare with allies in the region for jungle contingencies?
Yeah, so currently what we're focused on is basic level within jungle fighting. So having that understanding of really what you need to do as an individual and working your way into that squad level tactics. How do I move at a squad level? Really bringing everything down to the base knowledge that you would need to be able to operate in that environment. We're sending people all over the globe to try and learn more TTPs from different areas and bringing that back and incorporating that into whatever training we have within our current course. The other thing we're doing is we are sending some of the instructors that are going to these foreign countries, learning their TTPs, bringing that back and then injecting that into the 25th, and they're using those TTPs as we go through projects like JPMRC currently.
Just to pile on that, literally every exercise we do as part of Pathways gives us an opportunity to train, work, and learn from our partners in the jungle. Some examples of that we learned when we did JPMRC exportable version with Philippines. We learned that the terrain is so steep. We learned again, I mentioned Buna, but we learned water buffaloes are a great way to move supplies across steep jungle terrain and through the gulches. So our vehicles were having trouble. The Filipinos were using water buffalo. We started to do the same. We learned that triple canopy has an effect on antennas. So being deliberate about how we set up our C2 architecture to make sure we had solid comms is another thing we learned. Then last is the jungle field craft, which every time we do a rotation, we try and do extended over the night ops in the field to make sure we're expeditionary in that environment. We are learning from our partners on the different ways to thrive in that environment versus just survive.
Thank you, gentlemen. My name is Sean. I have a question. How are we measuring the efficacy of our training to the NCOs of our partners to ensure that that training we give them can scale into the local partnerships on their own? Thank you.
Well, I would say it's not really measurable. I guess the trick with this is to ensure that you just don't bring the American way down there, because sometimes culturally that's not going to work, right? It may work for us. It may work sometimes even in the joint force, but every nation out there has different laws, regulations, policies, customs, social norms. So if we take the American way and try to force feed it, it's going to backfire. That's where the ADDI process comes in. We'll send a team down. We'll analyze, like I said, first by invitation with their consent and then at their pace. We'll analyze it. We'll design something, make sure they want it. We'll develop the package. We'll integrate it, and just like we do with our own PME, we'll constantly reevaluate it to ensure it's meeting the need of that country. The real measure is whether that country is happy with the product or the recommendations that we give them. I don't know if there's like a yardstick, because PME, whether it's officer or non-commissioned officer or warrant, we clean that every year, right? So we always are consistently evolving it to make sure we have the most effective PME out there. Hope that answers your question.
All right, any other questions? Okay, that's it. I appreciate everyone's attention today. Certainly an exciting time to serve in our Army, especially in the Pacific. If you look at the requirements we need to build the readiness to ensure we dominate that first battle, the team in front of you and their formations are leading the way for our Army. Thanks.
Good morning, AUSA participants. Please join us at 11:35 for our next presentation in the Warriors Corner, which will be Army Space Vision, delivering effects for combat-ready formations.
What if the Army had a unit capable of destroying